And our first message today gets sent in to us by Twizzler, say that 10 times fast, who writes, "Hey John, love the show. Thank you so much, my friend. I was curious as to whether or not you believe the next batch of Star Wars movies will make as much as these new sequel films have. With the bad publicity from the last two, is an Old Republic and or new Star Wars story going to be able to bounce back? Thanks, and may the Force be with you." All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And it's an interesting question, but it's a fair question too at the same time. On the one hand, the thing that makes the question seem a little silly on its surface is, what do you mean bounce back? Star Wars The Force Awakens is the biggest, not Avengers Endgame, Star Wars The Force Awakens is the biggest domestic box office film of all time. Endgame, of course, is the more important worldwide leader, but everybody seems to forget that The Force Awakens is still the number one all-time domestic box office film. The Last Jedi is $1 billion+ film, and it looks like The Rise of Skywalker is going to be another $1 billion+ film. We don't know for sure, but it looks like it's going to be that way, so we'll wait and see. So it's funny to look at a series of films where all three are in the $1 billion club, one is in the $2 billion club, to say, oh my goodness, can it bounce back? So on the surface, it could seem like a little bit of a silly question. However, when you really think about it, it's also kind of a fair question. Because you're looking at a situation here where even though the box office is clearly very strong, there has been a divisive nature, not so much as much as The Last Jedi, but there's been a little bit of a divisive nature in the last two films. More The Last Jedi than this one. So it's kind of fair to say, well, where does it go from here? You know, can you do new films with the last two, particularly the one 2 films ago, but now this one also being divisive? Can you do new Star Wars movies and have people still come out and care? So on the surface, maybe a little bit of a silly question, but when you really think about it, it's actually a fair question to ask. I would suggest 2 things. Number 1, what I was mentioning before. Keep in mind that however divisive we may feel the last couple of films have been, they have been tremendously successful at the box office. It's not like people have been avoiding these films. People have been going to these movies and seeing them and eating them up. Number 2 I would want to suggest is this. I'd like to introduce you to a little film called Aquaman. John, why the hell are you bringing up Aquaman in a conversation about Star Wars and what it comes up? Well, think about this. In the DCEU, we had Justice League come out. Justice League at the time, was the lowest grossing of all the DCEU films. It basically broke even, making $600-something million. And this was a movie that was supposed to be able to contend and stand up with the likes of Avengers. This was their Avengers movie. This was easily should have been $1 billion film. Arguably, maybe could have been in the conversation as a $2 billion film. So it came out. It was very divisive. It really underperformed at the box office. All that kind of stuff. I think it still broke even, but it underperformed. So we could have asked the same question. Can DCEU bounce back? Well, in the aftermath of the Justice League situation came a standalone single character movie in Aquaman. Aquaman appealed to the audience. The trailers were great. Everybody likes Jason Momoa. It just looked solid and looked like a lot of fun. And what happened? In the aftermath and out of the rubble of Justice League came Aquaman, that became the DCEU's first billion-dollar film. And a lot of people, including this guy here, never thought it would hit $1 billion. Like I always knew, I would argue, hey, Aquaman's going to be successful. Don't worry about Aquaman. It's going to be successful. It won't make $1 billion. Well, look at that. It made $1 billion. So I would suggest if you're looking now at the Star Wars situation, we have a situation where, we're coming out of a divisive film. Yep. Or maybe even a divisive couple of films. But they still both made over $1 billion, which is something Justice League didn't do. So I would suggest if Justice League can transition from the situation they had into an Aquaman film, make over $1 billion, I don't see there to be any reason that we can't understand or believe or expect that a Star Wars film, when these other 2 Star Wars movies are still making over $1 billion, can't now transition into another Star Wars film somewhere down the line and it still enjoy great success. I think if it can happen in the DCU, it can certainly happen here. By the way, it can also go completely the opposite way. I mean, any movie franchise is never more than a breath or two away from being an abject flop, right? And that could happen with Star Wars. But so far, it's holding pretty damn strong, even if some people like me didn't like The Last Jedi, or the Rise of Skywalker. It's still holding very strong, doing very well. And if it can do very well under these circumstances, then yeah, if they put out some quality films down the road, I don't think there's any reason not to expect that they can continue to do well. Question here is, guys, what do you think about that? How do you think future Star Wars films could be received? Of course, it all depends on how good or bad the films are, but what do you think about that in general? Jump down to the comments section below and let me know your thoughts.